Welcome to Search for Signs. My name is Gary Willing. If this information interests you, please press the like and subscribe button and press the bell for notifications. It is July the 7th, and I hope you're having a wonderful day today. All right. I have some questions to cover in this video. Now, if you have a question for me and you don't know the drill, here it goes. First, have the question kind of be relating back to what we talk about, Maitreya, the Masters of Wisdom, and so forth. You can email me directly at searchforsigns@mail.com, or probably a more efficient way for you is just to post your question as a comment. And in the next video, listen to the most wonderful, perfect, eloquent answer that you could ever hear from somebody answering a question that you ever had. And then you'll hear me say my answer. And it won't be any of that stuff. No, I'll do my best to answer it as best I can. So hopefully that helps. All right. I do want to point out who this gentleman is in the video here real quick before we get into it. This is George Adamski. George Adamski, along with Benjamin Creme, claimed to have had contacts with the Space Brothers from our neighboring planets of Venus and Mars, Saturn, and Jupiter, and so forth. Claimed that they were here on a spiritual mission, here to help us, meant us no harm, lived life very harmlessly, and so forth. And said that eventually our humanity will start to look to them as our elder brothers and mentors and so forth. Two of his books that are wonderful reads, definitely check them out. The Flying Saucers Have Landed and Inside the Spaceships. Those are the two that I would recommend. But he traveled the world for years informing the public of the true spiritual nature of these UFOs and why they're here and so forth like that. He also said that they look just like us. They're humanity just like us. They don't have to change forms. They're not hidden in a suit or something like this, and they look like lizards or whatever like that, which they said they're just humanity. They look just like us. And humanity is universal all throughout cosmos, so that humanity actually, there's variations of humanity even on this planet, but they look very, 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 very similar to us. In fact, he said that they could walk into a restaurant, sit down, and order food, and the server would have no clue that they were from another planet. So now he also, and Benjamin Creme said the same thing too, that they help us in a lot of different ways, but they're in their some of them are in their spaceships flying around. Most of those in the spaceships are here cleaning up our atmosphere from the pollution and so forth. They're also here kind of waking us up in their own way of the fact that they're here. Okay. Other space brothers and sisters lower their vibration down to where we can see them, and they are working in all sorts of political fields and economic fields and so forth to help us through this crisis that we're going through. They know who they are, but the people who are working with them have no clue who they are. Now, the other way is they are born in the usual way, but they're from another planet. So, like, there's some historical figures that I can mention. Abraham Lincoln, Shakespeare, Leonardo da Vinci, to name a few, were actually not from this planet, but that basically became a part of our evolution, the human evolution on this planet, by being born in that way, and they started to incarnate and so forth in this, but they're not really from our planet. And George Adamski is also one of those. He was actually not from our planet. He was from Venus, but he was born in Poland, which to some might seem like Venus. It's a lot colder than Venus, I think. But it might be just as dreary. I don't know. I don't know. I've never been to Poland, so it might be beautiful there. But the pictures I've seen of Poland circa 1937 were not very pleasant. Just like it looks like, the terrain of Venus is not very pleasant either. But anyway, there's a lot of people living on Venus on the higher subtle levels of physicality is really what it is called, the etheric. So, but anywho, definitely check out his books. His opinions, along with Benjamin Creme's opinions, are very similar of why they're here, and they're very, very, very different than the majority of the information, and I put that in quotation marks, about the purpose and why UFOs and where they come from most people. Now, time will tell whether what they're saying is true, and if I'm believing something that's correct, or I got it wrong just like they do. I have a tendency to kind of resonate, it resonates with me what they're saying is true, but that's just my opinion of it. You can take whatever opinion you want. Now, it does kind of lead me to a commonish kind of question-ish that Tao Zhen Chi put in there, because he does like to post a lot of comments. Do you know not all aliens are friendly? And some say there are two alien factions you mean, without the R, want to have depopulation of the global population. Now, the first part, I could agree with, except for the aliens part, where we're all humanity. We're all brothers and sisters, so I don't view them as aliens like some people would. Are they all friendly on all the planets? No. I mean, I'm sure there's some planets out there that you wouldn't want to be caught on a dark night down, in an alleyway. They probably take care of you that way. But just like in the United States, I mean, you don't want to, there's some parts of our major cities that you don't want to get caught, when it's really, really, when it's dark outside without some form of protection, because, you might be in trouble that way too, But those aliens, to use your term, can't get off their planet, just like we really can't get off our planet until we put war behind us forever. So the Masters and the Space Brothers know when the time comes when humanity has made the choice to share their resources and then to bring about justice in the world, and then peace is starting to really be a reality on our planet, and we've put aside war forever, and it's behind us forever. They will then give us the technology of light, and then eventually we will be able to get off our planet and traverse the solar system and maybe even the galaxy when the time is right. But until that time, until we're able to show them that we're a peaceful people, we can't get off the planet. So those members of humanity on other planets that are not peaceful people either can't get off their planet. So these people don't realize that above humanity is another kingdom. It's a higher kingdom called the Masters of Wisdom. Now, Maitreya is the head and leader of the Masters of Wisdom on our planet, but there are guides, there are mentors. They stimulate humanity to growth and so forth, but they're also our guardians. They also protect us even from ourselves. And until they give the go-ahead for us to get off the planet, we won't be able to get off the planet. So, it is what it is. But anyway, but in time, like I said, they'll see that we're a peaceful species and so forth. But all right. Now, as for the other posts that you put up, Tao, I just don't buy it. So that's the reason why I'm not really commenting on it. The Armageddon and this, that, and the other, and nuclear holocaust. I mean, yeah, there's always a possibility of a nuclear holocaust. While any war, like Maitreya will even tell you that any war, no matter how small, can eventually escalate up to a global conflict, and that would mean all life on Earth will end. So until we start the principle of sharing and try it, there is that possibility, but I just don't think it's a very likely possibility. So, and Maitreya, because he lives in England, would say it's not bloody likely. All right. Now, next comment comes from Marcus Torres. All is confusing as hell at this point. All is confusing as hell. That's the point. Excuse me. I misread that. We are never meant to know clearly all the answers. We have to get back to our roots. Stop looking for the old ways. Start looking for the new ways to improve our day-to-day lives. Couldn't agree more, Marcus. I mean, we're all coming at this in a different way, right? Now, I think that the reason why it's so confusing for all of us, especially when it comes to trying to get answers from our so-called leaders out there, is because we've been fed a steady diet of lies over the years. I mean, who do you believe? Do you believe the Democrats that have lied to you, or the Republicans that have lied to you? Do you believe the lies coming from CNN or the lies coming from Fox? I mean, which do you believe? And then if you take the time and you're open-minded enough to listen to both, you start getting contradictory information from them. Really, because I don't think they really have the answers. And then when you look at the misinformation, let's say about UFOs, right? I mean, you might believe this, you might not, but according to Benjamin Kremsmaster, most of the governments of the world know why they're here. They know that they're actually peaceful and that they mean us no harm. Now, it's not only the United States, but the United States is mainly to blame for this. Is there are sub-agencies within certain agencies that put out misinformation. That's their job about the UFOs, and the Space Brothers, and why they're here, to keep us in fear of who they are, because they know if we actually looked at them and trusted them for who they were, for who they really were, we'd stop listening to our so-called leaders and listen to them. You know what I'm saying? So we would totally bypass our presidents, and our prime ministers of the world, and we go listen to what they have to say, because they probably have a lot more to say, and something more meaningful to say and more honest to say than what we're getting from our own so-called leaders. That's why they're trying to keep us in the dark, and keep us out of the loop. But according to Benjamin Graham's master, they already know. In fact, actually, the British government declassified a lot of UFO information because they said that it wasn't a threat to their national security. So they declassified a lot of the UFO information, and we'll start to see more and more of that as time goes on, I think. But anyway, but yes, I couldn't agree more. Now, the other thing too, in terms of looking at new ways to improve our day-to-day lives, I have to kind of circle back to Maitreya's main priority, which above all is peace, right? He says, without sharing, there could be no justice. Without justice, there could be no peace. Without peace, there could be no future. That's his main priority, especially right now. So my thing is, for what you're saying is, why not try the principle of sharing? Try it. Well, what harm is going to come from it? From taking food that's normally just going to go to waste, that the rats will get fat off of, and just give it to somebody that might need it. And see what happens. If give it 12 months, and if it doesn't help the situation, then we can go right back to the way we were doing, beating each other up to see if that doesn't create peace, and just see. Don't knock it till you try it, right? So I couldn't agree more that we need to look at different ways of doing things. And I think getting back to our roots, is getting back to the way we were as kids, when we were children, when we looked at life innocently. What's it say in the Bible? Be ye as little children, and stop following our so-called leaders down that slippery slope of potential destruction, and look at it as, we're all brothers and sisters, cousins, whatever you want to call it. I don't know, it doesn't matter, right? We're all brothers and sisters of the one humanity, under God, under the one God too, and, we need to treat each other that way. So the only way to start is to give the excesses of what we have in this country with the other countries and so forth. And it's not just the United States, it's other countries have excesses they can give away too. So I know I kind of beat up the United States, but it's only because I love the United States as much as I do. And I have a very, very, very high opinion of the United States. And that's the reason why I think we can do better. So never be satisfied. So anyway, next question comes from the Flying Car Show, all the latest. And I have to say, I love that name. I've always loved that. It's such a cool name. All right, how you doing down there in Atlanta, Gary? Heard they declared a state of emergency. You are so kind, whoever wrote this, to be concerned about my welfare. I really appreciate it. You're very kind. I'm fine. I have all my windows boarded up. I have aluminum foil on my head so they can't, the 5G towers, they can't read my thoughts. And I have my shotgun loaded in case somebody tries to steal my Costco stash. So I'm covered. I'm kidding. No, here in Atlanta, I've taken my life in my hands every single time I get in a car or walk down the street. So I'm used to it being dangerous. No, I have to say, in terms of the state of emergency and what's been going on here, how do I say this? I've been expecting it for a while. Dealing with the public the way that I have for as many years as I have, I'm surprised it hasn't happened sooner. But I'm very, very, very concerned for my city. I love Atlanta. I love the people of Atlanta, as selfish as they can be and as much as they irritate the fool out of me from time to time. I really, really, really do love the city, and it breaks my heart to see people doing what they're doing. But I know that in the end, we're going to be fine. I would like to say, too, I feel naive in saying this based on what we know of our so-called leaders, but I wish our leaders would just get out from their bunkers, get out from behind their fences and so forth, and just try to listen to people and see what they want. They would get a much different response if they would just do that. They have no problem listening to their donors. Those people that give them millions of dollars for their campaigns, they have no problem listening to what they want. But the millions of others who don't give the money, they don't want to listen to them. And this is the end result of what their problem is. And according to Maitreya and Benjamin Creme's master, the voice of the people will be the most powerful voice in the world. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a prophet. I'm not a soothsayer. I'm not looking in a crystal ball. I'm just reading the tea leaves on this whole thing. And I'm telling you right now, if they don't start listening to the people, they will be removed from office one way or another. And they will be thrown out if they have to, because it's getting to that point where people are just fed up with it. And we're starting to see the end result of it, you know. And like I said, if even just the governor of Georgia would just listen to what they had to say, just sit down with them, listen to them, get on Zoom and listen to them, and not speak and just listen, they would have a whole different result than they're getting right now. But they'll see. All right. And then lastly, I do want to address a question that Zen wrote. I 100% know the truth of karma, cause and effect, reaping what we sow, etc. I've seen it in my own life, but what confuses me is how the cycle will end. I mean, if there's always beings on this planet, humans and animals, requiring the reaping of that which they have previously sown, then that means there will always be other beings playing the role of aiding them in the reaping, perpetrators in parentheses, who are then creating more karma for themselves, which must be balanced out of the future date, and on and on and on. It seems like an endless cycle. By the very nature of law. Yeah. So the interesting thing is I actually kind of asked Benjamin Creme a similar question, you know, to one time when I was having lunch with him in San Francisco. And from what I remember, his answer was, the law of karma comes from the love nature of God. It might not seem like it to the person, or to the perpetrator, or to the the victim, or so forth. But in the end, it's actually, it brings us from early animal man to the point where we become a master. Now, the hundreds of thousands of lifetimes in between are tough, but in the end, that's the purpose behind it. Okay, now, forgiveness is the single biggest thing to mitigate karma. So if you look at Jesus as an example, right? The Romans put him to death. The Jewish dispensation, in the establishment was the ones that are behind it and so forth. What did Jesus say when he was on the cross? Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. He had already forgiven them. And by doing so, and truly forgiving him, being detached, no karma came back on Jesus. So Jesus didn't come back in the next lifetime and single-handedly annihilate every one of those people that did it to him, right? So the karma came back on them. Even, I know in particular, Benjamin Creme's master talked about Judas and his betrayal to Jesus and so forth. He came back in his next lifetime as an evangelist and was betrayed by his inner circle to the Romans and was thus stoned to death, and that was his karma coming back on him. But eventually worked through it, and he's now a master. So I'm sure he didn't want to get stoned to death, but it is what it is. Or as my daughter would say, it be like that. So it really be like that sometimes. No, the other one is service, and even sharing mitigate your karma, because if you have ever read the Essene, the Gospel of Truth, which is taken from Jesus's life and was written in the Dead Sea Scrolls and found by some archaeologists and some history professors and so forth, Jesus talked about that. And one example was there was a gentleman that was walking into town one morning as the disciples and Jesus were sitting on the side of the road on a hill. And Jesus leaned to Peter and said, that man, by the time the sun goes down, that man's going to be dead because of his karma. Well, anyway, the sun went down and the guy's walking the other way, and Peter leaned to him and said, Master, isn't that the one that you said would die because of his karma? What happened? He's still alive. And he said, well, on the way to where he was going, there was a person who was begging for water because he was thirsty. And he stopped and gave him his water. And that mitigated his karma. So he said, if you go down there and open up his bundle of sticks on his back, you'll see what I'm talking about. And the disciples did, and there was a poisonous serpent that would have bitten him. So, service burns up karma better than anything. The other thing too is, the way Jesus put it, or Maitreya through Jesus, what you sow shall you reap. Humanity had no idea about the law of cause and effect, but that was the first part of the teaching. Very simple, hey, if you're a violent person, you're going to get violence back. Those who live by the sword shall die by the sword, and so forth, right? I mean, it's very simple. Now, it's a very complex law. It's a very universally complex law. But that's, we have to kind of understand the first part of it first, right? If you harm somebody, it's going to come back on you, right? And then if you do, just, wait for it to come back on you, because it will eventually come back on you, as we all know, right? I mean, I'm still working through my karma just like everybody else, so I'm not immune to it either. I've already created personal karma for myself today, I'm sure. Now, the other thing is, Maitreya will be teaching humanity how to live within that law, how to live harmlessly so you don't create as much, negative karma for yourself. And that's not only individuals, but also groups and nations and the country and the world as a whole, right? Now, the other thing is, it's the balancing out of the karma is what's important. It's not a retribution. It's not a penalty. But eventually, through the process of service, through the process of forgiveness, that karma eventually becomes balanced. The other thing, too, is Benjamin Creme made a mention of, like, for instance, if somebody killed somebody and you have 100% of your karma, okay, the karma lords will decide how much and when it's divvied up to the person. So sometimes they give it all to the person. And in the case of a murder, right, for instance, that might mean that person dies, right? Other times they might take, out of that, let's say out of 1% all the way to 100%, out of 1 to 100, they might take number 50 and give it to the person. Then they might give number 4 and give it to the person. Then they might give number 86 and give it to the person. And then eventually, over a longer period of time, they get the karma burnt down, but it's not to the point where they have to die for it. The other thing is, toward the tail end of a person's life, their incarnational periods, when they're a higher initiate, let's say on the level of a Leonardo da Vinci or Jesus or something, they actually take into their own hands their karma and they start mitigating it and working it through themselves, however that is. I mean, believe me, I'm so far away from that at this moment in time. I can't really speak on that. But even Alice Bailey talked about that the higher disciple will actually start to mitigate his karma. They can sidestep it. They can do this, and that's one of the rules that they have to learn in order to become a master. But eventually, when you become a master, you stop creating any kind of karma for yourself. So that's the end game. And from the soul's point of view, it's the juice is worth the squeeze, I guess. So hopefully that helps. But thank you for asking your questions, guys. I really appreciate it. Now, I am going to read an article, Zen, and this might answer your question a lot better than I can, coming from Benjamin Creme's master. It was actually written in August of 2001. Now, what happened in September of 2001? This is why it's so auspicious, because it was published in September of 2001, but it was written in the last couple weeks of August. So it's entitled Detachment, and it goes right in line with what you're talking about. Sufficient unto the day is the evil thereof. There can be few, especially in the Western world, who are unfamiliar with this ancient Christian maxim. Passed down the generations from adult to child, it has found its way into the moral framework of countless millions. However, despite this long conversance, there are relatively few who appear to understand its meaning, and even fewer who live its wisdom. Essentially, it concerns detachment. The evil, the criticism, destructive gossip, and actions which abounds in most so-called spiritual groups succeeds in its intent where there is no detachment. Its bitter and corrosive venom flourishes where it is given the energy of constant thought and defense. Better by far it is to leave it to the karmic law than to brood and fret against its source. This being so, it matters not the nature of the evil, the intended harm. The law is impartial and works to restore equilibrium. No manner of struggle to right a wrong or defend a reputation can better the law of karma in its task. Save then your energy for better things and let the law decide the measure and the timing of response. When evil strikes, the best defense then is detachment. When the hunted animal stands silent and still, the hunter baffed goes empty-handed. When a man is detached, free from fear and the need to retaliate, he can calmly leave the great law to fight his battle for him. Thus the evil gains not, nor waxes in strength. This profound teaching of the Christ is usually expressed as an injunction against carrying injury or hurt from day to day, thus prolonging its life and further hurting the victim. This relates closely to the Christian concept of forgiveness. When a man is truly detached, he is already forgiven. He awaits patiently for the originator of the evil to realize the harm he does to himself, the victim, and the group, and to make amends. Thus is the evil blunted, and thus is it, quote unquote, sufficient unto the day. When Maitreya, the great Lord, emerges fully and publicly, he will devote much time to the concept of detachment. Not for nothing is it central to his teaching. He has already given his thoughts on honesty of mind, sincerity, and spirit and detachment. Not all at first will be able to follow his thoughts, but in time his energy of love will awaken men to the practicality of his wisdom. Gradually the old mechanism reactions of hate and envy will disappear as the social needs are met. As more and more are lifted up by the joy of working for Maitreya's cause, thus will it be, and thus will the people of all the nations grow in stature as emerging gods. Remember to take action and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.